You've tuned into Radio Northern Beaches. We live stream on rnb.org.au across the northern beaches of New South Wales, Australia and all over the world. You can also catch us local on 88.7 and 90.3 FM. Our podcasts are available at your convenience at rnb.org.au or rnbpodcast.com.au. So you and your friends don't miss any episodes. Don't forget to follow and share. Now here's our latest podcast.
Join Mon and Maz for Grit Diaries, where we share inspiring stories from grit to grace. We hear from incredible people and their stories of resilience, determination and growth. Everybody has a story. Here is your place to be inspired. Learn how you can look at your own story from new perspectives and be uplifted from new insights. From little things, big things grow.
Welcome to the Grit Diaries, from grit to grace with Mon and Maz, the show where we dive deeply into the stories of resilience, of courage, and the journey from struggle to triumph. My name is Maz, and each week we sit down with extraordinary people who have faced life's toughest challenges and really only to emerge stronger and wiser. From personal setbacks to profound comebacks, these are the stories that remind us all of the power within. Whether you're looking for a spark of hope, a dose of motivation, or a reminder that you're not alone, you've come to the right place. This is the Grit Diaries, from grit to grace. Let's get inspired. Trigger warning, we are going to be talking about suicide. If this is triggering for anyone, if this brings up any uncomfortable feelings, please reach out to Lifeline 131114. There is also a national crisis support for Indigenous support, and that's 13 Yarn, which is 139276. Over to you, Mon.
You're listening to Radio Northern Beaches, from Grit to Grace with Mon and Maz. We're so excited to have Karen here, Karen Arthur. And Karen Arthur, what a special woman you are. I'm honoured, and we're honoured to have you here today.
Welcome, Karen.
Yeah, welcome. So lovely to have you. Look, Karen, you're a Northern Beaches lady living in Newport or Bilgola.
Clairville.
Mm-hmm. And your background is just so colourful. I just adore you. You represent, obviously, you're an ambassador for the Women's Resilience Centre in Mona Vale, and you do a lot of cross-cultural work. You do a lot of work in recovery. I want to hear a bit first about you as an Aboriginal woman of Gomeroi and Anawan ancestry on your mother's side, and your father's side was Scottish, Irish, English. So you've got so many nations in your bloodstream. Born in Sydney, grew up in Western Australia and Northern Territory, and then you returned to Sydney at 21. So you've got, I would imagine, in your mind all the experiences of living in so many parts of Australia. Tell us a little bit about your upbringing, and just step us through a little bit about your childhood and moving through.
Sure. Like I said, I was born in Oxford Street, Paddington.
Oh.
When I came back here at the age of 21, I said, I have returned. But I left here as a small child and moved to a mining town in the north of Western Australia in the Pilbara region called Goldsworthy. It was called Mount Goldsworthy at the time. And it was iron ore mining, and my dad was a miner, and when we were there he became a union rep, so then we with the Australian Workers Union, and we moved from Goldsworthy to Port Hedland, where we were there for a few years, then moved from Port Hedland to Perth, where my dad grew up in Western Australia in Perth, and so I did primary school and the first year of high school in Perth before we moved to Darwin, and I cried for 3 months before leaving Perth to go to Darwin, because it was after the cyclone. And I just thought we were moving to this, just terrible place that was just being rebuilt, and little did I, I'm always amazed at how my mind can go to the worst possible scenario where I'm being led into a place that is really the next step of my evolution, and going to Darwin it changed my life. And as a child, because I was able to acknowledge that I was Aboriginal. Growing up in Western Australia, because I was, half caste or quarter caste, I don't know, that they were into numbers there,
No, it was mostly Scottish and English at that time.
Yeah. And Western Australia, I found it in the 60s and 70s was quite a racist place, and I heard names for Aboriginal people that, were really derogatory, and so I didn't want to be labelled that, because I could pass for something other than Aboriginal, and I was interested growing up. People would often say to me, "What nationality are you, or where are you from?" And so when I said Aboriginal, I said, "But you don't look Aboriginal," But going to Darwin, everybody was part Aboriginal up there.
So was it start to embracing and curiosity about your culture?
Well, it was more about self-acceptance at that stage, being a teenager and
which is naturally a confusing time of life anyway.
Yeah, absolutely. But like when you're brought up with racist ideology, you kind of take that with you, and so I was kind of confronted with my own ideas of what Aboriginal people were, and it was a difficult time, just trying to work out who I was in the world, and going back to Western Australia, being brought up in and having my character formulated in a very male-dominated kind of outback scenario was, there was a lot of drinking. There was a lot of that's all there is to do. Up in the mining towns and stuff. You
still the
work
same.
and you drink and and you might play football or something. But it was.
And so for a young girl growing up in that, and absolutely, wow. So it was a good move by the sounds of it in the end.
Yeah, Western to Northern Territory was amazing. But
why did your parents go to Northern Territory from Perth?
For my dad's work.
Okay. Yeah. What did he do?
He's still with the unions. As he moved up through the ranks in the union, he just so he was the Northern Territory rep.
Yeah.
And I think after the cyclone, there was a lot of industrial stuff going on there.
Yeah.
And he was quite involved with, I think it was the nurses.
Yes.
In the Northern Territory, coming on board with the Australian Workers Union. So he was an amazing advocate for people's rights. But
like his daughter.
I was about to say, I think that's rubbed off on you.
There is part of my dad that's always in me. Even the things about him that I didn't particularly like, I saw in myself.
Good and bad.
Yeah, but my experience was as a kid that alcohol was a way of dealing with, you celebrated, you commiserated, it was an everyday thing. And so when I was 10, I went to a wedding with my parents, and I was allowed to have pink champagne at this wedding, and they were somewhere else at the table. I just remember, thinking this is fantastic.
Elixir.
Yeah, and they found me a couple of hours later in the foyer of this hotel, passed out. Like I was a 10-year-old, and I was like I didn't have an off button even then.
Yeah,
it was drink till I passed out.
Yeah, well, they often say that if you start if touched by alcohol very early, you're more susceptible.
Yeah.
To
Well, from my experience is that, I'm an alcoholic and I don't have an off button when it comes to it, so I spent many years of my life trying to regulate, you know, and by the time I got to the Northern Territory, like I used from an early age, I drank until I passed out or I was sick. And
was that sort of in the environment that you grew up in, Karen? Was that deemed, oh my gosh, there's a 10-year-old that's doing this behaviour, or was that like, oh, come on, up you get and brush yourself off? Or what was it like?
Well, it was
what was the response?
Friday night at the park with the other kids. You know, like there was a few others who I would take hostage, or we would just, you know, do that together and
yeah, the 70s, and parents weren't really focused on their kids. They didn't know what they were doing.
There's an upside and a downside, isn't there? If we can find the right balance between the helicopter parent.
Yeah, we went a bit extreme in the next generation, really. But that 70s, well, when you get back, make sure you're back by dark, wasn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and it was, And so by the time I got to the Northern Territory, you know, my first experience with drugs was marijuana, you know, and I could have that and not be sick. So it was kind of like that was my choice from then on. You know, it became kind of my daily staple for 25 years after that.
Yeah.
You know?
And were you going to school with the other kids, and what was happening there?
I was going to school, but I was, you know, wagging a lot, and at my studies,
hanging out with the toughies.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and but, you know, it was weird because at that time I was also I'd been to modelling and deportment school, so I was doing modelling after school and on the weekends.
Yeah.
But I was playing netball and I was playing basketball, so there were other things in my life that were kind of keeping me in line. And
can I just ask you, Karen, on that, in reflection, just as we're talking about your growing up years, how important was that to you at that time? And looking back, was that because of course there's going to be parents listening in today and thinking about how does sport, play,
navigate,
and those other activities help when we're dealing with kids that are sort of dabbling in drugs and alcohol. Do you think that was like a bit of a safety net at the time?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
Keep them busy.
Yeah, because I had to go to training, you know, after school, and played netball and basketball, and it was a health and fitness regime, you know, that kind of had priority in my life.
Bit?
Absolutely. You know, and I think that the physical, because it's a time when you're changing a lot in your body as well, you know, and I think it was important for me just to keep the guardrails up, you know, because otherwise I could have gotten, you know, I don't know where I could have gone, but, you know, the possibilities are endless. But
yeah,
I can see you modelling. I mean, you're still a beautiful model.
She's
Look at you.
a very good-looking woman, is this Karen?
Long dark hair, beautiful dark hair, down to, wow, almost, just gorgeous woman. So there's a beautiful song that we're going to step into, isn't it? That has really we've asked you to share a couple of songs that have been of meaning to you.
Yeah.
And so the first song we're going into is the Pink Floyd.
Yes.
Time, Dark Side of the Moon. Do you want to say a little bit about that song?
Well, the very first time I heard this album, I was in a dark room with, the purple lights and the velvet posters that you used to get in the 70s.
Oh, yes, I do remember. Yeah.
The first time I ever smoked marijuana, got stoned and listened to this album, and it was a mind-blowing experience. But it also, you know, it kind of put my life on a trajectory, you know, that it's part of my story, and it was a moment that there was a paradigm shift in my world.
Trigger warning, we are going to be talking about suicide. If this is triggering for anyone, if this brings up any uncomfortable feelings, please reach out to Lifeline 131114. There is also a national crisis support for Indigenous support, and that's 13 YARN, which is 139276. Over to you, Mon.
Thank you, Maz. You're listening to Radio Northern Beaches 88.7, 90.3. We are very lucky to have Karen Arthur here. And we're hearing a little bit about your story moving all over Australia, ending up in Darwin, Northern Territory. That song Pink Floyd, Dark Side of the Moon, was sort of a catalyst for your experimentation into drugs and alcohol. And I just heard too that you have got a younger brother, and at 33 your father told you that you had an older brother, so that would have been a bit of a shock. So interesting, eclectic upbringing. And so where did that take you, Karen? Tell us a bit about that next sort of chapter of your life.
Well, when I was about 15, my mum and dad separated. Dad moved to Sydney, and Mum and my brother and I moved to Brisbane. I was in year 11 in high school, and the education system had changed, and I didn't want to repeat year 11, so I left school and went to business college. And at the end of the business college, my boyfriend from Darwin came down to Brisbane, and I moved back to Darwin with him, when I was 17. And so from 17 to 21, I lived with him. He was a footballer. I hung out with the boys in the North Darwin football team. And, I was doing my modelling. I was working. I was, trying to keep it all together. It was all, all pretty good. But then at the age of 21, just before I turned 21, I thought that I wanted to pursue a modelling career, so I thought I'm going to move to Sydney where my dad is, and he was living at Collaroy and the Northern Beaches at the time. So I moved to Sydney, started working in retail, and I was working at General Pants in Pitt Street at the time. And
that was a pretty cool place to work.
I loved going shopping in the city.
Yeah. It was a fantastic place to work. But I also had friends from Darwin who were gay friends, and they lived in the eastern suburbs. So I pretty much only went home to go and get clothes from my dad's place at Collaroy, and kind of hung out with them and slept on their lounge while I was working and partying in Oxford Street, and I had a lot of fun. We in the 1980s in the eastern suburbs of Sydney, there was a dance party every weekend.
Yes.
It was a lot of fun.
King's Cross was booming, wasn't it?
Absolutely.
Bourbon and beef steak
and Benny's and the Seaboard and you could party for days, and I did, and I worked, and I was also working at Jamison Street nightclub. So on Wednesday nights and Saturday nights. So it was a fun time until it wasn't fun anymore. But by the time I turned 26, I met my husband, my now husband, and
beautiful Joe.
He is, he's the love of my life, and. Within the year I was pregnant, and our darling daughter Charlotte was born on his birthday on the 27th of November. And I remember him showing me some diaries from when he was a teenager, and he wrote in one of his books, my 33rd birthday is going to be the most important day of my life, and that was the day she was born.
Oh,
yeah. So they had a really close connection from the moment she was conceived, and. When Charlotte was 14 months old, Joe went to jail. He got into some trouble, and so I was a single mum till she was nearly 6. And so I was working and just, spending my weekends at the jail, and it was just, it was really hard, a really hard time in my life. And I would go home at night and drink myself to sleep. And... it was a difficult time, but when he of course he was sober during that period, and when he came out, he was employed, and I decided that I needed a break. Because I'd been holding it all together.
Yeah.
This is my head, and so
Yeah.
that was one of the worst things I could have done, because I started drinking during the day, and I was doing volunteer work at the school where Charlotte was going, and helping kids with their reading and things. But because my guardrails had kind of been taken away, my drinking became worse, and once I started on that daily drinking, it was really hard to stop. And so I thought that we moved several times. That's what they call a geographical.
Yeah,
and you
get
think
out
if
of the
I
current
change
situation.
my life will change. But it
didn't.
doesn't.
No.
I go wherever.
You go wherever
I
you
go wherever the house was. And so it got to a point when I was in my 30s that I thought. At one point, I thought that I was possessed by a demon, or I was schizophrenic. This was my own self-diagnosis, because I was drinking to blackout.
Yeah.
And I didn't remember
Numbing.
the things that I was saying or doing, and I was quite violent, and I would wake up the next day and apologise for things I don't remember doing, and it was really quite soul destroying.
Yeah. Feeling just walking around in shame and
absolutely.
self-loathing and
absolutely. And so I spoke to my sister-in-law, who's a drug and alcohol counsellor, and she said, "Look, why don't you go to rehab? Because it will clear the muddy water." And I remember
clear the muddy water. I like that.
Yeah. So I did. I went off to rehab, and I did a 4-week stint at a place out in Eastwood, and but I thought that I didn't need to have a support system. I've got this, and so I didn't do meetings or anything. I just sort of, I'll do yoga, I'll pray, I'll do the readings. I'll do the shortcut version of it, but. I was white knuckling, and I was just full of resentment the whole time. So,
well, look what you were carrying, and you sort of touched on little bits, but I say an RC upbringing. You were really abandoned in a way. Your father left, and he sounded like he was a bit of a important man in your life. You found out about these secrets. So you had an older brother, later in life, but all these things, you knew there were secrets festering. So, you obviously being the eldest was overly responsible at times for your parents who are all over the place, so always feeling a bit excluded or a bit different because you're in two different cultures. So
absolutely.
I call that an RC upbringing,
And having to
abandoned.
navigate life, sort of work it out yourself.
Well, absolutely. And, it's like I was whiter than my black family, and I was blacker than my white family.
Yeah, where do I belong?
So I was kind of, but the strange thing is, like, I've never been able to be put in a box. Like, even with my birth date, like, I'm right on the cusp. So sometimes I'm a Capricorn, and sometimes I'm an Aquarius. So I couldn't even go.
What day is your birthday?
20th of January.
Oh, okay.
And then I always thought that I was born in the year of the dragon, and then Chinese New Year doesn't start till February, so I'm actually a rabbit.
Well, the Capricorns get younger as they get older, but they're also overly responsible. And Aquarians are, can't be contained. So you've got this kind of dichotomy of we won't go into stars, but it's so interesting. So you were white knuckling it, been in rehab. So tell us.
And then by 2002, the wheels were falling off my billy cart. I picked up again after that, and I decided to give the program a go. So
the program being the 12 steps?
12-step program. And so I haven't had a drink or a drug since the 2nd of January 2002.
Wow, that's worked, hasn't it?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And that was again, one of the biggest paradigm shifts in my life. I remember living in Darwin, and people had a time scale. It was like before the cyclone and after the cyclone. And for me in my life, It was before recovery and since recovery.
Yeah.
And then I have the additional, when I was 9 years clean and sober. My daughter had attempted suicide the year before, and she went to... she self-admitted to Mona Vale Hospital and then went to East Wing in Manly, and she had to stay. She had just turned 18, so she was qualified, an adult, and she had to stay in the acute section for 3 days before she was allowed to go to the other side. And in that 3 days, they had people's medications were coming, wearing off at 2 o'clock in the morning. They couldn't have locked doors. She was terrified the whole time. And when she left there, she didn't want to go to the other side. She just wanted to be released and come home. So she went to, she had some counselling sessions, and a few months later, she said to Joe and I that she was feeling suicidal again. So we took her to the GP, who referred her to a psychiatrist, who diagnosed her as being bipolar, and put her on some medication. And 2 months later, she was gone. On 7th of November 2010, we woke up, and she'd been to the races the day before with her friends, and I remember seeing her little face when she left. She closed the door and she said, "I love you, Mum," and she went off with her friends. And the next morning we got up and found her.
Oh,
yeah.
Karen,
I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
It was... my husband said that I was making I made a sound. I could hear a sound, but I didn't realise it was coming from me,
Yeah.
And I went completely
you're outside your body.
like I went into shock, and I went numb from my neck down. It was a bizarre experience because I couldn't feel anything. And so the last thing I wanted to do was have a drink or a drug to make me not feel, because I couldn't feel it.
No.
People were crying, and people, I had an amazing support system, and my husband was amazing. It brought us closer together.
Yeah. Which is really beautiful.
Oh, it either tears you apart or brings you together, and we did it.
No in between.
We did it together, and but the third day, when I could start to feel again, I wanted to just embrace the emotions, and
feel them.
And I went, we went to a meeting that day. We went to a meeting the following day, and at that time, a spiritual solution was what brought us to, helped us to get through the whole experience and navigate it. But it was kind of like the things that we've learnt in recovery were also the things that applied to life on life's terms, and one of the greatest challenges, just total acceptance.
Yeah.
And I remember Joe and I were having a conversation, and he said to me, we need to respect her choice, and that was a huge stepping stone towards healing. It's there's so many questions that you can't ask anymore, and and the mind will take you off into a place where what if I'd have done this?
Yes. What if?
Somebody say something? Did somebody do? It's like you want to blame. You want and I couldn't. There was no answers.
No.
So
you have to find something that feels meaningful to you, and it feels like that feels that I can live with that somehow. And it might be different for everyone, I imagine.
Absolutely. And so, for me, just respecting her choice, because it was her life to choose, and so from that moment, I've gone out of my way to explore the meaning of life.
Yeah, you have,
and
not only
connection, with my beautiful daughter, and
well, you do so much in the community, Karen. I see you on the sidelines, and you are so committed to supporting people through their journeys of pain, and through your pain. There's nothing worse than losing a child. But you've found, so much purpose in. You've helped so many. You talk, you run online, NA online for all Indigenous people all over Australia. You do so much to give back and to give people hope.
Well, one of the things I learnt in recovery, and part of the 12-step program, is about doing service. Because you don't think about yourself when you're thinking about somebody else, and 3 weeks after Charlotte, or 4 weeks after Charlotte died, Joe and I were so blessed to be able to do volunteer work for the Wayside Chapel that Christmas. So that we were there with people who were so much with nothing, the homeless people of King's Cross, and it was such a beautiful thing for us to not be sitting in our own pain and missing Charlotte, but being there to,
take yourself
to offer
yourself.
service for somebody. And it was such it was a really amazing experience. And we'd been to, the coroner's office will start sending flyers, and you can go on the mailing list, and one of the things that they offer is a suicide support group that was over in I believe it was Auburn RSL, or might have been Ashfield RSL. But I remember having to get there on a Tuesday night and cross 3 bridges, like Narrabeen Bridge.
We all know how hard that is for us Northern Beaches crew.
And it was it was so stressful to get there. And then there was an hour and a half of a room full of people, and they said, okay, so if you've lost somebody you're in the first 30 days, you go over to that little group, and there were just little groups of people, and then I was like, so how are we going to get through Christmas? And it was just kind of robotic, and it was really like I was still in shock.
Yeah.
And then they said, this was in December, and they said, so we're not here in January, so we'll see you back here in February. And Joe and I just thought, okay. And then we're making the drive back to the Northern Beaches and feeling like we'd just gotten off a roller coaster or something.
Yeah.
So at that point, we were in touch with a guy called Tony Humphreys, and he had a business called Speranza, which was suicide prevention. And with him, we started a support group at the tram shed. And every month we had people who were bereaved by suicide come and join us. And we would light a candle and take a photograph of our loved one and talk about them and say their name. And it was such a beautiful healing. And we did that for 5 years before the tram shed closed down. And then Northern Beaches Lifeline came on board as well. And so they've carried it on. They
fantastic.
have it on a Tuesday night in the Balgowlah offices.
Yeah.
And, so that was a huge part of our healing as well, as being able to give back.
There's something very special about this healing area, isn't it, of the Northern Beaches?
And thank you so much for sharing, Karen, the things that you were able to move into and be open to at that time that were very useful, helpful, connecting. And that's really important for our listeners. There may be people listening today that are experiencing same or know someone that's going through it. So we really appreciate you sharing what those little things were.
I think it's really important to not do it on your own.
No.
There's a whole community of people out there who really care, but they don't know what to say.
No.
And so I would encourage anybody to mention the name of their child or their loved one who is no longer here, and talk about
saying
them.
it out loud.
And
it's okay.
I still
So
talk
important.
to Charlotte like she's in the passenger seat of my car.
The Egyptians say we die twice. We die when we body dies, and then when the second time we die is when our name is no longer said. And so it is so very important to keep saying the names of our loved ones that we've lost.
And just before we go to the song, just because we're touching and talking about suicide, just to, if this is bringing up any uncomfortable feelings for anyone, please reach out to Lifeline 131114. and there is a national crisis support for Indigenous people across the nation, 13-YARN, which is 139276.
A song for you with Donny Hathaway. This was a special song for you, wasn't it, Karen and Charlotte? Tell me a little bit about why.
I played it to her. A friend played it to me when Charlotte was a little girl, and then I used to play it with her, and she loved this song. I loved this song. I played it at her funeral, and every time I hear it, it reminds me of her. And there's a line in it that says, "I love you in a place where there's no space or time," and that is so relevant to the unconditional love I have for her.
Hey Christine, do you know where I can find a JP? I need one to witness my signature and to certify copies of my ID.
Yeah, sure. I had to do the same recently. I went to Warringah Mall Library on a Saturday morning.
That's great to hear, but I work on Saturday. Do you know of any other places?
Oh yeah, there's other JP desks at other locations at different times.
Oh, okay. Where do I find out where they are though?
Oh, they're on the Northern Beaches Council website. Just search for Justice of the Peace and it's all listed there.
Oh, thanks Christine.
Welcome back to Grit Diaries, Grit to Grace with Karen Arthur, and I'll hand it over to you, Maz.
Trigger warning, if anybody's having any feelings of discomfort as we're talking about suicide and drugs and alcohol, please reach out to Lifeline 131114. Over to you, Mon.
Okay, Karen, huge story. Talk to us now about what your learnings are. What have been insights for you? What's been the nuggets out of your incredible, colourful life, living in many parts of both Australia and around the world, US, and now what you've just shared, which is quite it's mammoth of losing Charlotte and getting through into recovery yourself many years earlier. So that you had the strength to go through what you went through, and the power of the 12-step program and the community. Tell us a bit about what you think are your real key nuggets in life that you want to share with others.
Well, I guess a lot of the things that I've learned through the 12-step recovery program are ways to live life on life's terms, as they say. And I think letting go of the need to control is a big nugget for me, you know. And with that, like the first surrender, the first step in entering recovery or 12-step program is admitting your powerlessness, and in that it's surrender, you know, and there's an act of humility in that because you have to ask for help. You know, and then in letting go enough to accept that help and be willing to do whatever it is that is because it's really hard. It's really hard to go from a daily crutch to putting on your big girl pants and becoming an adult, you know, and becoming responsible for your choices and so, you know, the spiritual principles of a 12-step program is what kind of put me instead for the biggest event of my life, which is losing Charlotte, you know. And so I had to seek a spiritual solution to my, you know, my human malady, and that was my connection to what I call my higher power. Others call God, Source, you know, whatever you want to call it.
But it's not a religious program, is it? No,
it's a spiritual program, and it's, you know, and it's really reaching out to something that is bigger than yourself. So whatever you, and they call the God of your own understanding.
Yeah. Can I ask, Karen, what has it essentially given you as a gift to have that spiritual connection? What is the key thing that it's given you that without it you wouldn't have?
Connection to myself.
Connection to yourself. Beautiful.
Connection
Thank you.
to my spirit. And in that, I have a connection to my ancestors. I have a connection to my culture. I have a connection to my life.
If you were in the studio now and you just witnessed what Karen's face just did, there was a lightness that just came over her. It was powerful. Wow. And her eyes just lit up as she spoke that out loud. Thank you.
Beautiful. Yeah.
And connection, you know, and in that I'm connected to my husband, my family. You know, I care about my life. I care about a life that I cherish, you know.
Yeah.
And part of that journey has been, and what Charlotte gave to me was this like a portal to unconditional love.
Yeah.
And part of my program has been meditation. And I have a dear friend who's like a sister who is a medium. And she has been the conduit through which I've, you know, connected with Charlotte on the other side. And when sitting in meditation, in the beginning, when I think of Charlotte, my heart would just open up so wide, and I would be stepping into this vessel of portal of unconditional love, and it changed my life. It opened up areas for me to be curious about what is this. And so, you know, since then I've continued on a journey of curiosity about what life is about.
Beautiful.
About that connection to source, the connection to myself, and unconditional love. It's you know, it's a challenge to not have judgment in it's the journey from the head to the heart.
Yeah. And when I see you, Karen, I find you ooze joy. When I see you, I get tears dropping down my eye, and we have these moments because I feel this joy that you have, despite everything that you've been through. You really treasure moments, and you treasure people, and you've just, to me, an example of radical acceptance.
Absolutely.
And the only other thing that I really wanted to capture, and I think it's really, really important, if you can share, Karen, before we wrap up, is you mentioned in our break one of your real practical ways of actually helping you through the really, really tough moments. Could you unpack that just for a minute?
Absolutely. And it's not something that I made up. I heard somebody else talking about it, and I'm happy to share it with it being in the moment. And you can get to that place in meditation, but with a busy mind. You know, after Charlotte died, I found myself laying in bed at night thinking about questions that there were no answers to, just sitting in my grief, and being in the moment and connecting to my senses was a way of getting right there without, you know, being in the head, and that was to see what I could see, what I could feel, what I could hear, and just really sit in my senses.
So you would say out loud to yourself, or you would say it in your mind, what can I see, what can I feel, what can I hear, taste, touch, to ground yourself, and then go into your breath. And there was something that you said before about, what was that one?
Oh, this was a mind-blowing moment for me. I recently heard that the mind is the master of our senses, but our breath is our master of our mind, and is the master of our mind. And I truly believe you were talking about going into your breath.
Absolutely.
And just that, the life force of the breath.
Absolutely. And I've had a thought where the idea that God is all that is, and with each breath that I take in, I'm breathing in God. You know, so
Beautiful.
that I'm therefore connected to all that is, and it gives me strength to
Connected to Charlotte.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Karen,
Karen.
it's been absolutely a pleasure to sit with you for this hour of power. And thank you for so much insight and, just so much wisdom. It's lovely to have you here, Karen Arthur, on Radio Northern Beaches 88.7, 90.3.
Australia, the lucky country. We've got meat pies. We've got the world's best beer. But most importantly, top of the list, we've got Radio Northern Beaches 88.7, 90.3. Now hitting the entire world on www.rmb.org.au.